Okay, fun's over. It's time to get serious now. We're talking about educating our children, educating your child. It can be challenging in 2020 and beyond, but if you pay attention, it doesn't have to be as challenging as you might think. My guest today, Dr. Deborah M. Vereen. Who knew there's more than one Deborah Vereen? Thus the M, we're going to stress that. Absolutely. Joins us today. She has written a book entitled Repair the Broken Pieces, a system to awaken positive relations between the family and educational provider through engagement fusion. That is a long title.
It is.
But she brings a lot of expertise from the educational system. Bottom line is this: all children can learn. We just have to take a variety of experiences to focus on our child.
Absolutely. And it's so important that parents are part of the process. And my thrust is to raise awareness so that parents have the opportunity to form relationships with their child's educators so that an authentic partnership exists, so that ultimately the children excel in many ways.
Now, let's start from that premise, because the realities are most parents just want the educator to take the responsibility of educating their child and be done with it.
That's a wrong perspective for parents to take. And part of my task is to help parents understand that their role begins as being their child's first teacher when the child is born. And for many parents, they do take that role very seriously prior to the birth of their child. But parents have the responsibility to engage their child from birth on in meaningful learning experiences, meaningful life experiences, to enable them to be successful in school, like teaching behavioral boundaries and just exposing the children to the world, not just through books, but just everyday life experiences.
So what I'm hearing you say then is, as a parent, if I excite my child about learning, then that's an excitement that will carry over to the classroom and beyond.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not excited about it and I don't share that with my child, then I can't expect a teacher to be able to ignite that.
Right, and it's absolutely wrong for a parent to expect that a teacher assumes the full responsibility of raising their child, because essentially that's what it boils down to. If parents don't realize that they have a part in the learning process, a meaningful part in the learning process, it does no good for the child. Because what will happen is that children will be dropped off into a learning environment and they will be absolutely unprepared for the rigors of learning, for maintaining appropriate behavior within the classroom and the school.
Now, I think in theory this all sounds good, but realistically we've got parents in 2020 that have a lot of baggage.
Absolutely.
That have a lot of issues. That may not feel like they can do those things. Does that put those kids at a disadvantage?
It does put the children at a disadvantage if there are educators who don't understand what engagement really looks like. Engagement it goes beyond those things that I talked about in terms of parents preparing children for the school environment, but engagement focuses on the educators accepting the parents as they are and forming positive relationships with them, and not looking at the parents from the lens of deficit, as in terms of parents not being capable. So when educators change their mindset about parents, once they accept the parents who they are, once they affirm the parents, once they respect them, that opens the door for relationships to be built. And that is the key to family engagement, building relationships. So another part of all of this has to do with the reality of understanding. You mentioned baggage. There are parents who have issues that may interfere with their capacity to be as involved in their child's learning as they need to. There are parents who perhaps are in a survival mode. They may have to work multiple jobs, and education is the last thing on their mind. Many parents have had very terrible learning experiences when they were in school, so that puts a block there for the parents. They may not want to be connected to the educational process. So we could go on and on talking about the barriers that prevent the parents from being as involved and actively participating in the child's relationship. But what not relationship, but their education.
Yeah,
But what I'm proposing is that educators take the lead in working to form positive, meaningful relationships with the parents, getting to know the parents, and understanding that, yes, there are those barriers that exist, but the educators have to understand that some of the cultural barriers that they may have in their mind has to be broken too. Not all educators are keenly aware of the fact that their own perspective can interfere with their ability to partner with parents. For example, if educators look at parents and compare parents to their own parents or their unique parenting style or the parenting style of their own grandparents, for example, that is what is known as a monocultural perspective. That has to be broken. People have to understand that diversity is a part of who we are as a society.
Okay, wait, hold that thought right there. We got to take a commercial break because I want to come back to that, because there is an ongoing discussion, debate about whether or not diversity in the classroom makes a difference. And what I'm hearing you say is that it does make a difference.
It does.
We have a lot more to talk about when the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show continues, as well as how you can get the book and so much more. So stick around. Aren't you glad you tuned in today? We'll be right back.